this webinar is about dialogue facilitation and the role of the facilitator. The first slide is, what is dialogue facilitation? So if you remember the presentation of what is dialogue, so dialogue for us in the Nansen Center, as I said, this might be different in different places, is a process where you talk in a different way with each other. And it's also a special way of talking because it's an organized way of talking. You can have a dialogue, as I said last time, with a friend or a colleague in an informal way. But the dialogue and where the facilitation comes in, this is an organized way of having a dialogue with other people. So dialogue facilitation for us means that it enables people to talk together in a different manner. So it's not a discussion, and this is what it's very important. We had a training last week, actually, here in Lillehammer at our center, and we were talking about the difference between discussion or debate and dialogue, as I presented also last time. And I would say, for me, when I use the word discussion, for me, a discussion is where you argue against each other. So, which is very useful in many situations. But in a dialogue, is this what we not do? We do not argue against each other. So it's not a discussion, either a supervised talk or lecture. So there is no supervision in a dialogue or guiding or giving advices. So I think I also said that last time, that dialogue is, for us, dialogue is not only a way of talking what you're doing once upon a time, but it's a processed way of talking. So we believe, and when we talk about processes, we believe that this is something you start a process by having a dialogue, for example, about climate changes. And then people, because they talk in a different way with each other, they might learn from that talk, and they might take something with them. And then they will start to reflect on that. And this is the way how we think the process has started. And perhaps they will never go in a dialogue again, but this dialogue might have had an impact on them, which will have an impact on perhaps on the rest of their life. So we listen to each other in a dialogue, in dialogue process, and then we ask questions, and this is in the way the whole basis for the dialogue facilitation, and it is also based on some values, which are inclusiveness. I think I talked about that. It's deep respect. And this respect in the beginning will not necessarily be there when you have a group of people whom you want to have a dialogue with, a topic as a public dialogue where you talk about a topic. It might be that these participants, they are not respecting each other in the beginning of the dialogue, but therefore the facilitator needs to have these values or have integrated these values, like really respecting everyone. So even people you dislike very much, or people you have totally different opinions than you, but still you as a facilitator have to respect them. And you show that to the participants. You show that you respect everyone. And that will, in a way, influence the rest of the group. They will see that, they will observe you as a facilitator and which values you are implementing in this dialogue. You create a joint ownership. You create something that people, when they talk together, let's say a kind of community public dialogue about something which matters for that community, then you create an atmosphere where they take ownership for this problem they are talking about. It's not you. You as a facilitator are not the one who is looking for solutions. It's them who have to looking for solutions, also the participants. You are just giving them that space so that they can talk in a different way about it. And it's based on humanity, which means that you have empathy with everyone, you try to respect everyone, you treat people with equality. So if you have a dialogue with the mayor of a community and then some other politicians and people who work in the school or whatever, you treat everyone with the same respect, the same, and you create an equal ground so that people feel free to talk, that they feel that they are respected and that they are acknowledged. That's the key ingredients in a dialogue facilitation. So now we talked about what is dialogue facilitation, and we go on. So with this basis, a facilitator creates what we call a safe space. So, and they will then feel more respected and valued. And, you know, I have done many public dialogues and met a lot of people in many countries. And what I have experienced is that there is actually a minimum of people in the world who are listened to, because many people do not have a position, or they have perhaps not the right language skills, or they are not privileged enough to talk up in a group. But in a dialogue, everyone can participate, and it's you do not need special educational, you do not need special skills. You just need to be honest and open. And to create this openness is also a part of your responsibility as a facilitator. But that means if you are not open, if you are as a person not open and not able to talk about your feelings and your needs, then it will be difficult also for others to open up. So again, you as a facilitator, you are a role model. So you have to model what you want to get from those participants. So, and it starts with this deep respect for everyone, regardless of their positions, their views, what they believe in or whatever. You just respect everyone who is there. So the facilitator has to give the participants a feeling that they're entering in a conversation that matters and where they matter. And again, I have a lot of experience also working in Norway with immigrants. And what I have seen there is that many of them in the Norwegian society, in the majority society, their voice is not heard because they, as I said, might struggle with the language, but also because the way how many ethnic Norwegians are looking at them. If you can't talk a language properly, you might be seen as somebody who is not intelligent enough to participate in the talk like this. But this is totally the other way around. It's actually dialogue, and you as a facilitator gives the voiceless a voice. You help people to talk and to express themselves, and to go deeper into their thoughts and their beliefs. So, and they get this feeling of that this conversation matters. This is something which matters. It's not just a talk like you have in your private life, but you can really go out of this dialogue and feel, wow, I have been part of something important here, which has moved me, or where I have learned something new. The facilitator gives also the participants a feeling that they can trust the process. So that's, again, everything starts with yourself. It's not like the focus in the dialogue facilitation is about you as a facilitator. So if you trust the process, if you think this matters, this is important, this will bring something to the community, then they will also trust it. So it's very much a process which starts with you as a facilitator, and I often say in our trainings that to do dialogue facilitation is first to work with yourself. And I have done that for 17 years, and I still feel that I have to work on myself. And I'm doing things which not are functioning many times, where I'm asking leading questions instead of opening questions. I perhaps get so touched by something people are saying that I might lose the concentration, and then I can't really listen to people. So all these things happen, but you learn by doing things, and you learn by doing things which are not functioning. But what you have to do is to trust in this process, because if you lose trust in this process and in this methodology, then those who participate will also lose it. But beside of that, you will make a lot of things which are not, which perhaps not, where you do not follow your own of ways how you think a dialogue should function. But so as far as you are there and trust that it will go on, we will manage to go forward, then they also will follow you. So the core dynamic, so it's dialogue is a change process, and dialogue facilitation is also, we want to obtain some changes. Therefore, we invite people for dialogues. We invite people, and these changes might be many different things. So, for example, one change is that you might have got a new thought about somebody. Since we always categorize people, you know, we think, okay, these are people which are on the political left side, or these are people on the political right side, or these are people, they believe in climate change, these are not, or so on. This way we create these categories in people. So if you have a group with a mixed group of participants, and then you see that someone is actually opening up for a person which they considered as somebody they don't want to talk with, that's a change. You know, when you can bridge people, when you can people start to talk with each other, regardless of their positions and standpoints and beliefs and so on. So the process, the change process, is that you start, every participant starts with themselves to think, to reflect on what they are listening to, about their own thoughts, about the way which those thought process shapes their perceptions of reality. For example, and this is there, the questions are so important from the facilitator, because when somebody says, I think this community is working very well, and then you as a facilitator can ask, what brings you to think in this way? So you try to help people to reflect on what they are saying actually, and then to explain it once again, so the other can hear it. And then they might start to think, yes, why? What is the reason why I think this way, and why I experience or perceive the word in this way? This is the learning process, the change process we are looking for. And the facilitator plays an extremely important role in this change process, because the participants, at least in many countries I've been, this is not a normal way of talking with each other. The normal way of talking with each other, at least in many countries I have been, is a discussion where you argue somebody is right and somebody is wrong. In dialogue, it's not about right and wrong. It's about exploring the different possibilities of thinking and believing in things. And since this is a method, a way of talking, which is so unusual, I would say, from my perspective, then you need to encourage people to do so. And they need support from you. They need a positive approach, that they think, oh, yes, and they need help actually. And encouragement is one of these help you can give them. And this is your work as a multi-partial facilitator. And just to say something about multi-partiality, because before, when I started to work with that, we were thinking you can be neutral, a facilitator is a neutral person, but we don't believe in that anymore. I don't think anyone is neutral. When I enter the role as a facilitator and people see me the first time, for example, in a dialogue space, they will make up their thoughts around me. The way I am dressed, the way I'm talking, the way I am asking perhaps questions. So they will think, okay, she is from a peace center. Peace center in Norway are considered as something which are more placed politically on the left side. They will put me in that box probably. Then they will listen to me, and then they will hear that I'm not from Norway, and so on and so on, you know. And so I'm not neutral in this, that I'm totally outside of this community, but I'm a human being who tries to stay with all of them. So I'm multi-partial. I take part with all of them, and I don't take part for some. I don't say, oh, I like this and I do not like that. You can't do that. Then you lose your authority. Your authority as a facilitator lays in your multi-partiality. So you should never go out of that. I have done it. I have been in the situation where actually I was so, what can I say, touched by what somebody said. And then I asked a question, which was not a question, but actually my own opinion. And then I felt how I lost my authority. And it was done, actually. I continued doing the facilitation at that time, but I thought, I felt how I have lost my authority in that moment. So this happens, and it has happened for me many times, and I have learned from it, and I have also understood more and more how challenging it is to stay multi-partial, especially when you yourself get engaged in what people are telling you. The participants in this change process, they need also sufficient time because it's, as I said, it's not something natural to do normally. And I don't know how this is in Poland, but Norway and also at least Germany and Norway, which I know best, I would say there is very much a resistance to change. Most people don't want to change. We change when we absolutely need to change. When I got divorced, I had to change things, and I didn't want to change it, but I had to, because I was forced to do some changes in my life related to that new situation. But normally people don't want that. So they have resistance against change. So they try just to resist, and you need to have a lot of patience to really give that space for them over time, and just stay there with them. And you have to, as a facilitator, understand that this takes time, and it's not done through three hours. You need perhaps weeks for doing this change. What we are looking for in a dialogue is turning points in the facilitation process. So turning points are quite important, and I will now explain what this is. So turning points are these situations where participants move away from talking in a polite and superficial manner, and then they start to speak more honestly. They might take the risk of being emotionally vulnerable, or they mention values that evoke our common humanity. And in our trainings, in the facilitator trainings, we have these, we talk a lot about these turning points. And because as a facilitator, you have to listen to this turning. You have to see them and to observe them and to hear them, and then you have to do something with it. So let's say a turning point could be that a person, as it is written here, would say, I'm very afraid of the development in our community because there is much more criminality here now. So in this quote, the person talks about to be afraid. And that is perhaps the first time in an hour that one participant is talking about a feeling, namely fear, to be afraid. When you hear that as a facilitator, you should follow it up, because this is what we wait for. We wait for, in a dialogue, we wait for emotion and needs to be expressed. And then as a facilitator, you will, when this quote comes up, you will ask, for example, could you tell something more about that, this feeling of being afraid? So that people, the whole idea behind this is that we as humans, we are driven by emotions. When we are in difficult situations, but also in our daily life, we are very much driven by emotions and our needs. If I have a need for safety, that will steer my way of talking and behaving. If I'm totally fine, I feel safe, I feel secure, I feel actually relaxed and happy, then my space my possibility to talk more honest and open is much bigger. But if I feel insecure, I'm afraid, I am sad, I am angry, I will always try to protect myself. I will not talk so openly. I will more talk on the surface. But the possibility for change lays in these emotions and in these needs, because you first have to be aware of why I am afraid, There has often their underlying root causes related to that. So we try as a facilitator, and especially in conflict-based dialogues, we try to help people to reflect, to talk about these root causes. And because there you can do changes. And there are researchers who have done a lot in conflict transformation theory, who have found out that to make a sustainable change, in order to make a sustainable change, you have to address needs. So what is my need? And needs are something all people in the world have needs. We have the need for love, connection, being acknowledged, and so on and so on. And we have to address also these needs in order to get a change. And to help people to talk about that. And this is also humanizing. So people then can see that a person they dislike has a need for safety. The other person can also see that, okay, oh, this is also a human. I dislike them. I thought they were just evil, but they also are a human being with these kind of needs, and this can actually help you to motivate you to listen more to that person. So the moments, these turning points, are we waiting for as a facilitator? These are the most important moments in a dialogue, and we have to see them, and we have to recognize them. And recognition in a dialogue is, from the facilitator's side, means to see the person, also to give them, look at them, and that's the kind of recognition, and then to ask a question, which is not always possible. because sometimes you don't get that moment, or you are not aware enough of that moment which happens. But this is training. You can train this muscle to listen to these turning points. And when you first have learned that and you get aware of that, there are turning points in people's way of talking, then you can easily address it. But it takes time. And for us in the center, it took us also a long time to develop this, because in the beginning, we were not so, I would ask questions because I thought intuitive that this was the right thing to do in that moment. But I was in the beginning not so aware of these turning points. This is something we developed over time when we saw how these public dialogues especially work. So this, where we talk about a topic. But it's extremely effective. So it's, I have got so much feedback from people who said that that question about, for example, that one emotion they were talking about helps them to actually to understand something new about themselves and their way of talking and their way of reacting. So now we have talked about what is facilitation and so on in general. And I have also touched upon the role of the facilitator in this facilitation process, but I want to go a little bit deeper into that, since you all are facilitators and work as facilitators, to show you what we have found out over time a facilitator needs to do, or also I will talk about personal characteristics of a facilitator. So what is needed? What do I need to develop in myself in order to be even a better facilitator for dialogues? We had a training last week, and I in these trainings, that was not a facilitator training, but still they did also some facilitation. I discovered again how what can I say, that this is it's a challenging role, but it's also a way. One participant, she said, this is also a role where, how can I say it? You have a lot of responsibility when it comes to asking questions and follow the process, but at the same time, you are not responsible for the content of the dialogue. So you can relax on that, and you are not the one who have to find a solution or to give advices. So in many, many roles, as supervisor or teacher or whatever, you always need to give advices, or you have to transfer knowledge. You don't need to do that. And so that's this participant in the training. She was also from Poland. It was also a Polish American, so part of the group were Polish, part of the group were Americans. She said that that was a kind of relaxing, but it does not mean that you can relax it when you are in the role of facilitator, but you're not responsible for the content of the talk. So that's in a way relaxing, she said. So when that's said, this reflection from the last training. So as a facilitator, you are not a leader, but you have some similar task, like leading the preparations of the process, which means that this is something I have discussed much with my colleagues here, because you are not directly leading people in a dialogue to a solution or to an agreement, but you are leading in a way that you do the preparations for the process, and you are also leading in that way that you, through your questions, lead them to discover their own emotions and needs related to the topic. Because we believe that this is necessary. So we here in Nansen, we believe that this is necessary to do in order to get a change, a societal change. And a change is not necessarily an agreement. So just to make that clear, a change is that something the society, the community moves forward in one or another way. And so you are not a leader in this sense that you decide anything for the group. You don't, if you have a topic and they start to talk about another topic, you just follow them. So you are not leading them back to the topic. But your questions are only to help them to reflect more, to get aware of the underlying premises for their thinking and for their beliefs and their positions. You are not a moderator or expert. And this goes back to what I said around the last slide. A moderator would, when you have a topic, integration of refugees in Norway, and then you have a dialogue about that topic. You invite people to the library or wherever to have a talk about that, and you facilitate it. And then suddenly participants from the community start to talk about the violence in the community. And then you will not, as a facilitator, you will not say, now the topic today is integration of refugees. You can't talk about violence. You will not do that. You will just follow them. So you are not a moderator. And you are not an expert. You are not the one who knows. I'm right now facilitating a process around, I don't know, I can't remember if I mentioned that last time. It's a huge process in north of Norway where the Sami population is involved and the government, the Norwegian government, the Finnish government. And it's about salmon and the river where the salmon is disappearing, but it's about much more, many underlying premises there. And I don't know absolutely nothing about salmon. I have never fished a fish in my life. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I should do. And I'm not Sami. I'm not part of the government, and I'm not even Norwegian. So I am not an expert at all. So and when I started to facilitate these dialogues in between all these different parts, I was actually, when they talked, I sometimes not even understood what they were saying, because I saw to the terms they were using around all these theoretical terms. But you know what? That helped me actually. It helped me that I didn't know anything. I had no knowledge about this conflict there actually, because it helped me to listen more, because I had to listen so extremely carefully, because it was a totally new context for me. And the participants, and especially the Sami people, who is a group of people in Norway who has been very much oppressed over centuries from the Norwegian government, they accepted me as a multipartial person, because they saw that, yeah, I have no idea. And they said, okay, she actually she's not part of this at all. So that's also a way I like very much this role, to be so humble that you are just listening and you are not you are not giving any advices or showing them the way out of the conflict. It's just you are there for them, to give them, to help them to understand more and take ownership. And of course, you will, we have talked about that before, you will never, ever give your own opinions around that topic, never. Then you have lost, then you can just stop this dialogue. So as a dialogue facilitator, you do not teach, but you create a learning process. And in many of the trainings I have had, many places, this is often because in our trainings we do role plays, so people can, the facilitator can try out the role as a facilitator. And what often is difficult for the participants is that they start to teach, that they try to say, yes, but I think you perhaps should do this or that as a something. You just, because of course, you observe the group and you might see how much they are struggling with something. And then you might think, oh my God, I have to say something because I think they should do like this. They should talk in this way, or this one should talk first. But you can't do it. And it's frustrating sometimes because I think I could say something which would help them. But then you take the ownership from them. And it's their responsibility. If they have a problem, they have to fix it. You are there to help them to talk about it. And the best dialogues are those dialogues where you can step out as a facilitator so that they talk on their own. And so you create a learning process, but it's a learning process in this way that they learn something about themselves. They share that learning to the group and then back again. And you help them in this process by being there, listening to them, and following up with questions. So now we are coming to the first brainstorm. So I have now talked about what is facilitation and given you some insights in how we as Nansen do facilitation. And I have talked a little bit about the role of the facilitator. And now I would like you to ask, what do you think are some personal characteristics of a facilitator? What should a facilitator have as when it comes to personal characteristics to be able to do this job? And just to underline that from the beginning, I believe that most of these personal characteristics one can learn. So it's not that you are born with it. You can learn it. And this is what we do in all our trainings. But first is questions. So to you participants, which I can't see, but I would at least would like to hear your voices now and opinions about what do you think are personal characteristics of a dialogue facilitator. So please go ahead. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. Thank you for this round. It's nice it is functioning. We will do it a little bit later again. Self-consciousness, very important. I will go a little bit through. I wrote them down while Natalia were translating it for me. Patience is actually a very, very important personal characteristic for a facilitator. And last week when we had the training, there was many situations where I was thinking about how important patience is. And because that was a special group last week, it was half part of the group were college students from the US. So there were around 20. And then the other half part from these 24 participants in the training were from Poland, and with the average age were perhaps 40. And then I saw how important the group process is and how patient one has to be in that group process. Because, for example, from the Polish group, there were some who were very good in English, others not so good, but then you had these native speaking English speakers. So I saw how that influenced the whole group process, that some of the Polish participants, I felt in the beginning, were a little bit difficult for them to express themselves, even they talked quite good English, but not, of course, they could not talk like this native speaking students. So there you need a lot of patience to bring the group together. And this is, of course, last week it was a training, but in a dialogue it's the same. And in a dialogue you have even less time to do so. So you have to be really there and stay with them. Ask questions, we have talked about. Openness, yes, and this is something I must say I'm working on the whole time, because in our trainings we have an exercise which is called limits of tolerance. And I ask myself the whole time, because openness is also about, for me, openness is related to tolerance. So how tolerant I am, and what can I not tolerate? And these are thoughts I have to digest and think through before I'm doing a facilitation, because you are totally right. As a facilitator, you have to be open the whole time. If you close down to one of the participants because you can't tolerate his or her opinions, the participants, they will see that, they will observe that, because, as you know, most of our language is body language. So through your body, you will perhaps express that you're shut down because you can't really openly listen to that person with that opinions. So this is something I the whole time work with myself on when I'm facilitating and something is said, and then, oh my God, that's horrible what they are saying, and still stay open for what they are saying. Curiosity is super important as a facilitator. If you are not curious on what people are telling you or interested, and you show this interest with your body language, then people, of course, will not talk. You have to be sensitive, but in the same time, as another of you were mentioning, you have to have that's very strange. You have in a way to be very sensitive and to listen, and you have to help people to express their feelings and needs. But in the same time, as some of you said, you need to control your emotions in this way that you can't give you over. So if a participant is crying, you can't just also start to cry and lose in the way the room which you have to maintain. And I have cried in facilitations because something have touched so deeply on me, but then I cry very silently, or how to say it. So my tears might go down, but I'm still there for them and still containing that safe space. So I have showed emotions, but I can't show emotions in that way that I take part, so that I show emotions, for example, for one part and think, oh, that was sad, or not for others. So to stay multi-partial, it's totally right, as you said, you have to have a control on your own emotions, but at the same time, you have to be sensitive and very close to the participants, but also be distant to them. So that is a balance which I'm often struggling with, because I'm a quite sensitive, emotional person. And sometimes I think that's difficult. I want to add one thing, and I think I said that also last time because it's so important for me, and that is a facilitator has to be humble, which means for me, humility means for me to really, I understand that I am not better than others. I also struggle in my life, and life is a struggle, and to really to show people that you can see this is something we have in common. Okay, now, yes, and then I made a list also, and as we have it here, open-minded and aware of your own biases and prejudice. This is also something very, very important, that you know, okay, I have prejudice. I have a lot of prejudice against super rich people. And I have facilitated dialogues with people who are extreme rich in Norway. And I must say, I struggled very much with my prejudice then. So I had to work in beforehand very much with myself. Then we have talked about empathy and tolerance. The respect, we have talked, patience, you mentioned also, yeah, creativity is important, to be flexible, because things might change suddenly. Somebody suddenly stands up and screams and shouts at others, and then you need to know what to do and find creative solutions. Yes, I have talked about equality, to create an equal ground, regardless of people's backgrounds, formal education, status, position, whatever. I had once a dialogue in Kenya in a slum with a group of priests and Rastafari people. I don't know, I think it's Rastafari people in English too. But they are very far from each other in a way. And the priestess, they came with these special priest clothes. I don't know what this is called in English. And they, and I'm grown up in a very Christian family. But in that moment, I was very aware of not to give them more respect, more, to see them more, or to talk different way with them than the other group. So be aware of that. How can I create equality in the room so that I'm actually treating everyone in the same way and greet them, have my attention to everyone and not only those who have high status positions also. I need to be very positive, because this is a different, challenging process for the participants. We want some change, so I have to be optimistic and positive on their way, so that they can do it. You can do it. You can do the change. It's I believe in you. You have to be self-reflective. As I said, you have the whole time to be aware of who am I, what do I bring with me as Christiane. Humble, we talked about that. You have not to be afraid of controversial thoughts. So when somebody from extreme groups is saying something, I can't just get totally lost in that moment. I have to just to contain myself and my authority. You have to be trustworthy. If people don't trust you, they will never open up. Then we have skills. As the skills and personal characteristics, it goes a little bit into each other, but I anyhow did this slide. So you have to be, you talked about that listening. We talked about that a lot. You talked about this asking questions. But you also you need to have the willingness to learn the whole time, because this is also a learning process for me the whole time. I'm learning new things the whole time. I'm doing things in a wrong way, then I have to learn from it and to change it. We have talked about multipartiality. You need to have authority. But this authority comes not because you are so knowledgeable, like a teacher, for example, or it comes from your integrity, that what you say and what you are saying and what you are doing is goes a line that you have an integrity in yourself. So then people will trust you. We have talked about interest, observation. You have to be observant and attentive. And last not least, but I have also said that before, you have to believe in people, deeply believe in people, that they find their own way out. They don't need an expert. They need just a space where they can talk together. Yes, I have one more question, which we can do the same like we did. As you understood, questions are the core of a dialogue. So I would like to ask again the whole, all of you who are listening to this, what is a good question? If you could give me some characteristics of a good question, what you think is a good question. Perfect. Thank you so much again. This is just short, but we also need time for the question round in the end. I just wrote down good timing, absolutely. So the timing is to observe as a facilitator these turning points, as I was talking about, where people start to open up and then you ask a question related to what they are saying. To help them to express their emotions, as you said. And one who wrote in the chat in English was saying that you can reconsider your opinion. So that the question helps you to reconsider your opinion. That's absolutely the core in dialogue. And some of you said it should not be leading. Many questions are hidden accusations or even attacking people or criticizing people. So this is something we do not try. We try not to do in a dialogue. That these are really open questions, and questions, good questions, are actually difficult also to formulate. And this is, I would say, for me, the most challenging part for a facilitator is to in the moment to find the right questions. So what do you have to do in a facilitating process? First, you have to create a dialogical atmosphere, which you do by setting up the shares in a circle without tables. At least this is the way how we do it. You develop ground rules, and in public dialogues, which I have understood that you mostly are doing, we do the ground rules in beforehand, and we present them when we start. You have to follow the process. You have to listen deep and following up questions. You have to, as a facilitator, to observe the group dynamics and follow them up, see what is happening. You have to show deep interest. You have to stay multi-partial, and you have to model the behavior you expect from the participants. And one ground rule for me, myself, as a facilitator, is I can never expect more from the facilitator and from the participants and what I'm expecting from what I would do myself. So if I ask a question about a certain emotion, for example, I'm always checking in with myself and asking myself, would I answer that question myself? Would I answer this facilitator about my fear? And if I have checked in that with myself, then I can ask that question. If I find out, no, I would never answer that question, I will also not ask it, because I think this is a very respectful way of drawing the line, how much questions and how deep you can go with your question. That was a big issue during the last training last week, that people were talking about how deep can we go before it gets a therapy. I would say for me, there's a very clear line between therapy and dialogue, but it has some of the same characteristics. The dialogue process, the facilitation of a dialogue, you also have to do some preparations. And how we do it, it's often that we are requested to do a dialogue for someone, for a community, for an institution. Now we will have a dialogue in a museum. So then we have to tell them what they can expect from this process. We have to tell them about the concept of dialogue, the purpose, objectives. I have to explain my role. I have to explain what I will expect from them when it comes to time, engagement, responsibility, and check out if there is a longer process, perhaps there's an underlying conflict there, then I also have to check out time and how much time they will give to this process. I have also to clarify the outcome expected, what people are hoping for. That if they are expecting an agreement, solution, or whatever, I have to say that this might take a long time, and that I will not force it. But if the group want to find a solution, then them absolutely can find a solution. But I will not force this process in a way, and that is, it takes a long time and there are small steps. And I have been in several processes where there are those who have requested this dialogue, and I had explained it beforehand that it might take a long time and so on, but they thought still that this will go much faster, and in the end they stopped the process because there was no fast outcome. And then I said, okay, so it's up to you. I will not, I can't give more in what dialogue is for. So be very honest about that. Don't say yes to something you can't fulfill. Yes, this it is. That was good timing. It's 11:05, and now we have time for questions. That's a very good question. Yes, for me, it's how can I say it? I need to work with my respect. I need to say to myself the whole time, this is also a human. This is the way I do it. When I'm confronted with a person I really dislike and their opinions, I really deeply dislike their opinions, I actually talk with myself without saying it loudly, during the dialogue, and saying, this is a human being. You have to respect that person. You have to respect that person. So I'm really trying to put that in, like, this is the only way I can say how to do it. This is the way I'm doing it. And I have been confronted with people with very extreme opinions, as far away on what I believe is my values are. But that's the way I'm doing it. And sometimes I actually can empathize with them. I can think that, wow, how do they hate this group of people so much, that I'm, and this helps me then to listen to them and show them that I'm respecting them, and I'm respecting their right to express their opinions, but I'm not accepting their opinion. So I'm differentiating between respect and accept. Good question. Thank you for much. So these turning points, for example, as I said, could be, let's do another example. For example, a generalization. This is very common in Norway. There are people saying, all vegetarians, they just want to force us not to eat meat at all. And then you ask something, that's a very generalized opinion, because there are, so then you have to ask something about that. Then you could ask, what do you mean by that? So what do you mean that all vegetarians are, so that they have to differentiate? And then they can perhaps talk about their experiences, and they could say, yes, but my aunt, she says that nobody in the family should eat meat anymore. Then it's coming down, you know, to his aunt. It's not all vegetarians, it's his aunt. And then you go deeper into how do you feel about that? And then this person can talk about his feelings, you know, and say, I get way angry because I like meat and I think we have to have meat and blah, 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 you know. So this is a way you go in, you try to listen to these kind of generalizations, feelings, strong emotions, and then you go in and ask way opened questions around it. So to help them to differentiate, to help them to explain more. And while they are explaining, there will come up new things which might deepen their thoughts and helping them to go deeper. Very good questions. Thank you for that. You know, this question about change is very much linked to the turning points. This change is something which takes a lot of time, and the change process is about small things like that. One person in a dialogue who, for example, this person who has these thoughts about vegetarians, that person understands that it's not all vegetarians who absolutely will that nobody eats meat, but that person understands that there is a various opinions around that, also among vegetarians. So that's an important change, and this is an important change perhaps for that person understands, because just to go back to something else, because we often when we think, okay, all vegetarians will force us not to eat meat anymore. That means we create a group of enemies in our society, which are in that case the vegetarians. And then we create a distance in between me, who likes to eat meat, and those who don't like, who will force me not to eat it. And media is doing that a lot. And then the change in a dialogue would be that person or others who are in the dialogue would understand, no, it's not, these are not our enemies. They have other ways of, they eat something different. They think that is more healthy and so on. But it's not that we can talk about it. And you can see that it's not a whole group of people who are who are the enemy of or our society or the way how we did things before. And if you start with that somebody understands that, this understanding might be the first step in a change process. That perhaps this person who might have a family conflict about it now is able to go to his aunt who is vegetarian and always says in all family meetings, don't eat meat and we can't eat meat and so on. That they start perhaps to talk to each other. Actually, I had this situation in the last training. We had a conflict dialogue. And there was a young student from the US who had a huge family conflict about a business they were running. And so he went through these dialogues during the training where we also do dialogues. And then he said to me in the evening, he called his mother after that. He was part of this conflict, the student. He called his mother in the evening and said, Mama, we have to change this. Now I know that we have to change and we have to talk with each other. He or his mother hadn't talked for a long time because of the conflict, ongoing conflict. So that was a change process which just happened by talking about it in a dialogue. And because in the dialogue, you don't need to defend yourself. You just explain and the other person explains. And then you take into consideration what you want to take into consideration for yourself. So you're not forced to that. You're just more a subtle way of changing things and changing the way how we see the world and understand how others do see it. And another change process, I think important, which is important in dialogue, which I have seen many times, is to distinguish between accept and respect. Because at least in Norway, we mix it up. That when I respect Adriana, I also have to accept all her opinions. But I can't respect her, but still disagree with her. And this distinction is so important and this is actually a change process. If you are able to do that in a group who is deeply disagreeing on something, then you have done an amazing job, because this is a very important distinction to understand that we have to respect each other in a society, but we don't need to accept everything what people are saying, and can disagree and talk about it. Thank you so much for that question. In dialogue, in a dialogue, as we practice it, it's super important not to share your opinions, because then you are not multi-partial actually anymore. And even in public dialogues, this is our experience, there are often underlying conflicts there, because the topics might be conflictus, so we have some conflicts inside or as a root cause. But what you explain here now, to talk about what is a good, what would be a good life or something, there are other methods where you are not using dialogue, but where you have a talk where everything tells your story, and you also do still tell your story or your opinions. But in a dialogue, is your role as a facilitator is to create a space where they talk. You are not part of it. It's not we, it's them. So when I'm talking about, when I'm, for example, starting a dialogue, I say, we are gathered, you are gathered here for a dialogue about this and this topic. I'm your facilitator, but you will talk together. So I'm not part of this talk. I'm just creating this space so that they can talk together. And I'm giving them questions so that they can think. And this is something you have to make very clear when you start the dialogue. But there are other methods where you are participating, but in Nansen, we would not then call it dialogue. But that's up to you. So I will not say that this is the right way. This is the way how we have developed it. And in this way, you will never share your opinion. They might know what you think because somebody might know you, but then you lose your multipartiality, and you will be part of that talk, but you are not part of it. You are just facilitating it. No, you know, you are really not an idiot. I at least, I'm not an idiot person. I have very strong emotions. I have a bunch of prejudice. I'm failing the whole time. But yes, but at the same time, I like to have these ideals there. And I'm trying the whole time to reach them. As I said, I have worked with that for many, many years. And I will never reach the ideal person there. But I'm trying the whole time, and I'm checking in with myself the whole time. Do I really have these values? Do I really respect all these people here? Am I really humble now in these situations? Where are my limits for tolerance? So I would say the reason why I like to work with facilitation is because it's a process for me the whole time for self-development. So I can never rest, actually. I have the whole time because there comes up new prejudice, there comes new people I don't like or whatever. And then the same thing is, it's a role. It's not, it's also a way of living. I would say that it has influenced my life a lot, that I have changed a lot in my way of listening to people. But when I'm in the role as a facilitator, I go into the role. I'm not acting like that 24 hours. I have a lot of fights with my boyfriend or my children and so on. So I am not, we are just humans, you know. I'm not an angel. So, but when I go into that role, I actually try to be there, but I'm also they see that I'm a human and that I might fail, and then I say it. So now I have done it so much time, and that I feel quite confident in it, in that role. And then I can also say, oh my God, no, I forgot myself. I should not. Often people will just say, okay, yeah, or we take a break, but show them also that you are human, but you are in that role, like a teacher or like a doctor or a nurse or whatever, you know, you put yourself in that role in that moment, and then you try to act accordingly to that. But it's, and I think if I would have reached ever, which I never will, this ideal, I will lose my humility. I think I can be humble because I see I'm also failing. And that's, they also see that. And this is what is, I think, the way of opening up, is this humble approach. No, there is no moderator. So it's very many, most of the times it's a facilitator and a co-facilitator. So we haven't talked about the role of the co-facilitator, but Siri and my colleague who were in the other webinar with me, we are doing it very often together. So the role of the co-facilitator is to take time, because you have to watch time so that you're not going over time. The co-facilitator is the people in the, if there are more than 10 people, they have to raise their hand. So the co-facilitator makes a list, a talking list, and she or he gives the word to the person who is the next on the list. And the co-facilitator, in public dialogues at least, is doing a summary. So the co-facilitator is also noting down some words to make a summary in the end. The facilitator has his main task is to ask questions and following up questions. And he is also presenting in the beginning what is dialogue, what is the role of a facilitator, what is the topic, and what is the opening questions. Yes, we haven't talked about the opening question, because in every public dialogue, there's the opening question, which is really, really important. And we use sometimes hours to formulate the opening question, because the opening question has to be so open that people actually start to talk. And for example, I'm facilitating public dialogue or topic-based as a with an interreligious group. I think I mentioned that last time too. There are people from the Catholic Church, Protestant Church, Baha'i, Muslims, and so on and so on. And they wanted to talk about the topic for all of these dialogues. This is a series of dialogues. I think there are 6 of them. Is the overall topic is sexuality, or how, as religious people, how to relate to this LGBTQ movement in the society and so on. And then the first topic for the first dialogue was what are the limits? What is the limits for sexuality or something like that? And then my opening question for that was, what is sexuality for you? And I struggled so much to formulate that, because I was thinking, how can I open up? And I was a little bit scared because this is a group of people who, yeah, some of them are very conservative Christian. And it worked extremely well. So people were very surprised about the question. And then they really went so deep into it and discovering what is actually sexuality, what does it mean, and is it only marriage, or what is it about, and so there is no moderator. There are facilitator, co-facilitator, and then you have a coordinator, somebody who coordinates these dialogues, which is the one who invites you to do it. And this coordinator might be the one who has contact with all the participants. They sign up, They prepare the food for if there's any food for the meeting. And but then the facilitator and co-facilitator take over, and then there's no moderator there anymore. The tolerance exercise is very easy. It's you put people, so you have a group of people that you have shares, and then you have one line with shares on that side, one line with shares on the other side, and they sit in front of each other, 2 persons, like this, over the whole room. And then you give them that, we call that this exercise listening circle. And it's not a circle, but it's called listening circle. And then they, let's say, me and Adriana, we are sitting in front of each other. So then the facilitator gives this question, what are your limits of tolerance? And then I have some time to think through it, and I will answer that question to Adriana. I will tell her what I think are my, this is the way I'm thinking about it. I'm starting to think about it. Then the facilitator stops it at the 3-4 minutes, and the whole group does the same, answers the same question. And then it's Adriana's turn to answer that question, and I will listen to it. Then I change the seat and I get a new partner, and I will do the same again. So through this, you will more and more deeply think through what is actually my limits of tolerance. And you ask, what can you agree? Also, what people are saying, they say. You will never say agree or don't agree with that as a facilitator. You can just ask questions. So it's the only thing is when somebody is attacking another person, then you might have ground rules where you can react on that attack by going back to the ground rules, which might say that don't attack each other or something. But still there you will wait, because it's through your questions you help people to understand what they are doing and how effect it has on the other. And so I would never say, no, you can't say this or that. I would, through my questions, try to help them or these people to think through it, what they actually have said. And then it's a group process. So the responsibility is also on the group. So normally the group will also react on things. When you first have worked with them for a while, they will react on things what others are saying. And then they will say, no, but you can't, why are you saying this and that, you know? So you empower the group also to take action in that process of the dialogue. So, so that they take this responsibility I was talking about. And good luck with your work.